So I've got two patrons on my channel who are both called Thomas Jones, which is very confusing. One of those, Thomas Jones 1, I like to call him because he was the first one to join, he's requested that I review Shutter Island, a film that I hadn't seen since 2010, back when it came out. And while I liked it at the cinema, I never loved it. There were certain things about it that I think I didn't like the way they were done. And I also think now on reflection, having watched it again for this review, that the cinema I saw it at has had issues with their sound, because there were certain times during the score on this film that it just made me want to leave, quite frankly. Issues which, watching it this time around on Blu-ray, I didn't have. So I can only assume that was a sound issue back in the screen. But yeah, watching this film second time around, knowing, and it was what, 14 years ago when it came out. That's a long time. I did remember kind of the ending. You know, I knew that, and spoiler alert for anyone who's, you know, going forward, if you've not seen Shutter Island and you don't want to know the ending, then maybe dip out right now, come back once you've watched it. Now that that's out of the way, yeah, I knew where this was heading in regards to the central character's outcome. That you know, yeah, he's the insane one, and so that really helped with this viewing, and it made me appreciate the film in a much greater depth, I would say, particularly when you look at what all the actors around Leonardo DiCaprio is doing. So for those who don't know, this follows the story of this man, FBI agent, kind of he goes to this place called Shutter Island because someone, a patient is there, supposedly has gone missing, and he's there to find them, but he's there under ulterior motives. There is another patient on this island that he wants to find, that he believes is responsible for his wife's death. Where it goes from there is completely different to the setup that it kind of paints at the start. And that was one of the things first time around where I think it lost some points for me, because I liked the story it was building. This whole thing around a conspiracy with regards to experiments that are being done on people at this Shutter Island, which kind of is born out of similar experiments that were done by the Nazis to the Jews in the concentration camps. Now, I liked where that story was going because it brought up a lot of different things, aspects about the world we live in today that I feel are quite relevant, particularly with regards to if you want to dismiss someone, you just paint them as crazy. And the moment you've painted them as crazy, then anything they say can be easily dismissed. And I think a lot of that goes on today. In fact, watching this film today, it feels more relevant now than it did back in 2010. The guy who wrote the book on which this is based, Dennis Lehane, if I've got that name right, probably not, but he set the film deliberately in the early 50s, precisely because it spoke into that very same thing that had happened, obviously, coming out of wartime, a lot of people kind of being put into mental homes, a lot of treatments were being done that, well, quite frankly, today would seem quite horrendous. And I know that some of those treatments were done because they were done on a relative of mine. So it kind of had a bit of a personal element to it, did this film. Watching some of the stuff that's done in regards to some of the patients at Shutter Island, and hearing the way Ben Kingsley's character is trying to go against that. He's trying to do something different, trying to bring psychiatry into the modern world. Or is he? That's the question. That all kind of resonated quite deeply with me. It's a very dark road to travel when you're treating people in this manner, because the whole system, the whole mental health care system, can then be used as a way to get rid of people that you don't want speaking in society. And I do feel like today that it just feels very relevant to me with regards to cancel culture and things like that. But yeah, so I liked that first half of the film and the stuff it was exploring. And I think the first time I watched it, when it dovetails in the final act and it becomes something else, and you realise actually no, this the people we thought were villains are actually not villains. They're trying to help. The guy we think is the central hero, while not necessarily what I would call a villain, is a mixed up person. He's damaged, and that for me kind of tainted it on first watch, because I didn't want this person to be damaged. I wanted him to rail against the system and win. So yeah, and I never went back to it after that. But coming back to the film 14 years later, watching it, knowing where it was heading, although there was quite a lot in here that I hadn't remembered. I didn't remember Mark Ruffalo's character being who he ends up being right at the end of the film. I didn't remember him coming back after his supposed death scene. So yeah, there was elements I'd forgotten because over a decade since seeing it. But the central thesis of this character played by DiCaprio being in there because he's a patient, I remembered that, and knowing that going through the film, as I say, it made me appreciate certain things. Like when you look at what all the actors are doing around DiCaprio, the first time you watch it, you just automatically interpret it in a very particular way. They're not happy for this government agent to be there investigating them. The security guards feel a little bit territorial. They're like, who does this guy think he is? He's coming in here and, we'll find our own patient. Thank you very much. So all that comes off. And then Mark Ruffalo's character, the way he interacts with certain other characters, it kind of makes you think one thing, that he's looking out for his partner, his FBI partner, and that he's just trying to do his job, uncover the truth, this, that, and the other. And then when you go back and you watch it and you watch what he's doing, the reactions to the different characters around him just take on a whole new meaning. In regard, like there's one particular scene with a patient where he's interviewing her as an FBI agent, but then when you go back and you watch it again, actually he's playing at being an FBI agent and she is one of his patients. So the reactions that he does then take on a whole completely different kind of meaning. And it really made me appreciate Ruffalo's performance a heck of a lot more, because the first time I watch it, he feels like a little bit of a bit wet behind the ears in a way that an FBI agent wouldn't be. I wouldn't expect an FBI agent to be, but not to the point where it becomes so unbelievable that you're questioning it. But there are just off moments with him where you're just like, all right, they're playing up his kind of new kid on the block side just a little bit, almost too much. And then, like I say, not to the point where you then start to question things in the way that you should be doing. So when you get to the end of the film and you find out all these characters are not who they appear to be, it's a really great reveal. And like I say, it makes the film stand up to repeat viewings, because when you go back to it, you're watching things in a different light. Now, there's one character in here played by Jackie Earle Haley, and he's only in one scene. He pops up at one point and him and DiCaprio's character have an exchange. And for me, this was the only sour point in the film, because instantly these two characters start talking to each other as if they know each other. I'm pretty sure that DiCaprio's character names him at one point. And I'm kind of scratching my head, and I'm thinking, has he been mentioned at some point during this film already? And I completely missed that. Am I supposed to know who this guy is? It's like the way the scene plays out, I feel like it's presented as if we're supposed to know who this guy is, and I don't. And I'm sat there thinking, I've not been paying attention, have I? I should know who this guy is. And then it's only right at the end of the film when Ben Kingsley's kind of giving a huge explanation as to everything that's going on, that you're clued in a little bit more as to who this guy is, but not to the point where I'm absolutely certain. Now, I went back and I kind of listened to that scene again, watched that scene again, and it does make more sense immediately after, after having just watched it and having that little confusion, but then having everything ironed out, just going back and then watching that scene, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, right, that makes sense. But like I say, coming to it the first time and then coming to it the second time after like well over 10 years, it doesn't play so well, that sequence. So that for me, I don't know if that's just the way it's handled. I don't know if it's badly handled or whether it's just me not being smart enough to pick up as to what's going on. But it just, yeah, the way it's presented left me in a state of confusion where I thought, I'm to blame for not, I must have missed something here because I don't know who this guy is. I don't know why they're talking to each other like they know each other. And that kind of, for a moment, took me out of the film. Other than that, there's nothing else here that really hits a bum note. The cinematography is absolutely amazing. The score is really impressive as well, especially given the fact that previously I really didn't like it at the cinema. But again, to me, that speaks of sound issues. Watching it at home, it really works quite well. So yeah, performances all around, absolutely astonishing. Ruffalo in particular, like I say, but also DiCaprio especially. One particular scene, once he learns what's happened, what went on with his wife and his family, is a real emotional gut punch. When I first saw this back in 2010, I didn't have a family, I didn't have kids, and I will admit, I think I do have specific memories of when I watched it thinking, oh, okay, DiCaprio, you're going for Oscar here. You're really cranking it up because you want the Oscar or whatever. Not that I thought it was a bad performance or anything, but I just thought he was turning it up to 11. Having in the interim between seeing it the first time and this time, now having a family, having 2 kids, I wasn't sat there thinking, oh, he's cranking it up. I was immersed. I was just, as soon as he finds those kids, it was just a gut punch, and his reaction to it, to me, just felt real. I will say, however, something that kind of jumped out at me was the attention he seems to pay more to his daughter. He's pulling his 3 kids out and then he lines his daughter up, almost separate from the 2 boys, and then he sits with her and he brushes hair. And I'm sat there thinking like, oh, someone's got a favourite child, eh? And I went to Letterboxd last night just to do my score on it and whatnot, and somebody had literally written that very comment in just underneath in one of the reviews that was highlighted, and I was just like, yes, absolutely. So yeah, that's mildly amusing aside, but other than that, yeah, DiCaprio's performance is absolutely brilliant, real gut punch, like I say. Ben Kingsley, really great as this psychiatrist who, again, he plays it in such a way that all the way through you can believe that there's something just off about this guy, something sinister, something covert. And as it turns out, there is something covert. He is lying to this man. He's role playing, but he's doing it for the best reasons possible. He's genuinely trying to help these people. And it just really endears you to him towards the end. You realise that this guy is love. He's the symbol of love, the symbol of hope in this film for people who, quite frankly, have no reason to hope anymore. I also really love the final moments as well, which are also quite a gut punch. It's like this really sacrificial moment when DiCaprio's character, he reverts back. So basically they're trying, Kingsley's character is trying to stop him from being lobotomized. He wants to prove that his more modern techniques will work and that they can cure him, so that he doesn't have to be lobotomized. But other members in the hospital, other like higher ups, they're like, no, look, you got one chance. Prove to us you can fix this guy, otherwise we've got no choice. We've got to lobotomize him. And the final moments is basically DiCaprio's character choosing to be lobotomized, which is, I mean, for anybody who's familiar with the procedure, it is not a pleasant thing. Every time somebody explains lobotomy to me, it makes me do that. It makes me wince. It's just disgusting. But there's a guy who, in the end, chooses to have his memory erased, chooses to live in ignorance because it's less painful than the memories that he is now given, thanks to the work of this psychiatrist played by Kingsley. It's just this little piece of dialogue where he pretends that he's reverted back to his mental illness, and they're left with no choice but to hand him over to the lobotomy team, and then he delivers this one line that is almost like actually, I'm fine, but I'm not fine. And in that moment, it really encompasses so much about what mental illness does to the person suffering from it, and the choices one would make to not have to live in such a state. It's just, there's a lot of pain tied up in that, but also the fact that this guy chooses it, makes this choice. It's his terms. He goes out on his terms, nobody else's. I don't know what kind of hope one would glean from that, but there's just something about that that's quite poignant at the end. So it's an emotional ride, and there's some freaky ass kind of visual stuff going on throughout. As you're looking at a lot of stuff that you think is all in this guy's mind, it kind of gives you these freaky visions and stuff. And then there's other stuff like there's the famous moment that was in the trailer. I remember being in the trailer, and whenever they kind of show a clip from Shutter Island and something, they always show that moment when it's this kind of crazy looking bald woman who's like giving the shh kind of sign, and when you go back and you look at that and you realize, oh, she thinks she's playing the game, but because she's mental, she can't help but give it away. So she's telling him to shush because it's like, we're playing, aren't we? And it's a childish moment. You know what I mean? Like the first time you watch it, it's really sinister. It feels spiritually dark. And yet when you watch it in the context of knowing everything that's going on, she's very childlike. Well, you watch it and you have rather than fear that you have at the start when you first see her do that, the second time around, you have compassion. You get the sense that, this is a child trapped in a woman's body who doesn't quite comprehend what's going on, misunderstands it. It's a really good film, much better than I previously gave it credit for, I think. And it's definitely gone up a lot in my estimation. And I don't think it'll be quite so many years until I next revisit it. So yeah, I'm going to give Shutter Island a 4.5 out of 5. Give it a watch. If you have seen it, I would like to know what you thought about it, as would Thomas. So please let Thomas and myself know down in the comments what you think about Shutter Island, where you would rank it amongst Martin Scorsese's filmography. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.